Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I'm going to be talking about nothing in particular. I realised I went mildly quiet there for a moment and that's because I can hear my father shuffling about downstairs. It's very strange at the moment with these new conditions for having to record, knowing there are people in the background who can possibly hear you and also who don't respect your need for them to be quiet. I shouldn't allow it to frustrate me so much, but it does. I'm also wearing the hat because despite the fact that I washed my hair, we're just not getting on with each other. As with the week before, and possibly continuing for a few weeks in future, I don't know. None of us know. We're all in some strange sort of limbo. I don't know when I'm going to be called back to work. If I'm going to be called back to work, don't know whether I've got a job. Currently furloughed. Great stuff. Please help me. Buy some of my books. People have been very kind, noticed that this is happening and bought further Kindle editions, reviewed my books, recommended my books, and more people have gone out of their way to support me in the last week, so that's been great, and thank you to everyone who has done that. I posted on my coffee page last night that not a lot of writing has been happening, and I know I mentioned it here last week that I joked about the fact that all I needed was a bit more time off work and then I would be able to get my book finished, and that hasn't happened. I deleted everything that I had written for this chapter because I took half a page to say something I could have said in a sentence, and I became aware that the characters in here had spoken before and I was behaving as though they were just introducing themselves. I have been recording more in the last week. My days have gone really weird in that for whatever reason I'm not sleeping till really late in the night and I'm not waking up until really late in the morning. And I'm one of those people that if I haven't got anything written by midday, then for whatever reason I just seem unable to put pen to paper then. And I know that that's my own thing and it sounds completely stupid, but that's where we're at. I can't say as I have watched anything new this week. The Disney Plus subscription has been getting used by my sister. Netflix has been getting used by my brother. The only thing I think that I watched was RuPaul's Drag Race, the latest episode. And we finally got Snatch Game, and did anyone else think that it was a really subpar Snatch Game? I mean, it's been there for 10 seasons now, and it's one of my favourite parts of every season. Before I even watched the show, I watched all of the Snatch Games. This one did not do it for me. I agree there were a few standout comedic performances, but if you set them off against what we've had in previous years, this just wasn't that good. So this week, I'm considering watching The Mandalorian, which is a strange thing. Yes, I'm probably giving into hype here, but how do I explain this one? I don't like Star Wars. I don't like the original trilogy. I don't like that sequel trilogy that came out when I was a child, and for whatever reason, because I was who I was, everyone thought, oh, Charlie likes Star Wars, and for years I kept getting Star Wars related gifts. I don't like Star Wars. I'm saying it now, say it everywhere. But this one is a TV series, and I've heard it described a bit like a Western. Because it's described as a bit like a Western, I have some nostalgia for that. I might give an episode a go, but I'm also not very good with television shows because I started watching Lock and Key over a month ago now. It had only been out for a week when I started watching it, and I got through 3 episodes and I was really enjoying it. Same thing happened with The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina when that first came out. I'm still on episode 4 of Stranger Things, and I started that when that show came out. There is just something in me that I get to like episode 3 or 4 and I think, I've done my time, I'm out of here. I'm hoping to rectify that this week and probably not watch so many repeats of Kim Possible as I have been doing. Because I'm an adult, if you didn't know. Apparently, legally, I'm an adult. Also noticed in the last week that my teeth are starting to look a bit weird. I don't know whether they're going back to their original state of the middle tooth being over the other. I haven't worn my retainer in a few years, so much so that it no longer fits in my mouth, but there is some piece of metal at the back of my teeth holding them in place. Every video I record, I look at the teeth, and you'll probably notice me just wondering what's going on with my mouth. It's a funny one. It's weird. It makes no sense. Yesterday, happened to look at what people search for and come across my channel, and just below Booktube Prize, which was my most popular video for a while, it went Booktube Prize and then dentures. These aren't dentures. If they were dentures, they would look a lot better. I'd have probably spent the same amount of money on them, but these aren't dentures. These are the result of 2 sets of braces, a few times having teeth taken out. When I was 10, I had an operation and removed all the teeth on this side of my mouth because it turns out I had 3 sets of teeth there. It's a whole drama. Honestly, it goes back to when I was a baby. I swear I'm just some sort of mutant. You know, like in the X-Men. I always felt like maybe that was my superpower, was that I just had half an extra set of teeth in my mouth. There's a few more of you this week. I've noticed that we've had a rise in subscribers, so hello. I'm Charlie. How are you doing? Usually I upload a Woolgathering video and tons of you disappear, but please don't do that because it's nice to see you and I quite enjoy having people to chat to. I've also been trying to improve that, going into people's videos and actually commenting, because there are people who I would connect with and I would comment and we'd be chatting for a few weeks and we'd be getting on with each other and then I'd just teeter off. And I don't subscribe to anybody new on a regular basis. I don't go searching for people to subscribe to. I forget to comment, or I'll notice somebody's video there, but I don't use a watch later playlist, and then when I come back that video's gone, so I'm then trying to get through all of the videos that are there, and it's a wild one. Shall we talk about some books? So we had Cozy Reader Night on Friday, and I read Himself by Jess Kidd. I'll probably post my recap at some point. It's very short and it's not interesting at all, but I made it and I talk about Himself a lot in that video and I don't want to re-record me talking about that. But I am now 130 pages into Monkey by Wu Cheng En, translated by Arthur Waley. It's everything I wanted it to be. It reminds me of the myths and legends that I used to read when I was a child, and I appreciate that nostalgia. I was really glad when something happened to Monkey because I felt like I was getting the tale of a villain, and this villain was just winning against everybody and I didn't understand it. We've now reached a point that I knew about from the TV show. Obviously the TV show doesn't adapt everything as it is in here. For one thing, Monkey's a literal monkey in here, whereas in the TV show he's actually some very muscular, abdominally strong actor. So to find out that Monkey was a literal monkey was a surprise. But we've had demons, we've had dragons, we've had death, we've had gods, we've had planets. I will admit to being a bit confused when the planet Venus was a man, but so hopefully I'll finish this today or tomorrow. There are funny moments, and one thing the author does, because it's written in a style that reminds me of fantasy novels from this era, then at the end of each chapter he says, if you want to know what happened next, well, you'll just have to listen to the next chapter. And I just love that. There's something so charming about this book. I have said that I do have this worry because I can't tell whether he has anglicised a lot of things and made it more British. So I would be interested to find out whether there have been more recent translations of this that maybe, or whether it does stick very closely to the original, because I know it's part of a bigger narrative. So I do need to do a bit more research around this. But for the most part, it's charming and it's what I'd expected from fantasy of this time. Wherever my Kindle is in this pile that you can't see, I am reading Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. This is part of a read-along that I know is being hosted by Kate Howe, but I don't know whether anyone else is hosting this as well. Friday night ended up being quite the charming night because I read Himself, read part of Monkey, and read some of Deerbrook, and I'm doing what Kate said about reading a chapter a day, so we will be reading chapter 7 today. I don't know, I am a few days behind. I'll happily admit I'm a few days behind on that. But I don't know whether it's because I'm reading it on my Kindle, but it seems so much faster and to get through than Dickens or the other Victorian writers. It reminds me of the Bronte sisters in pace, because I found the Brontes were a lot easier to read because they weren't like filling up their sentences with this unnecessary bloated prose. I mean, I like Dickens, we all know that, but sometimes you want something that isn't gonna just go all round the houses before getting to the point. And I know this book's 665 pages in print, but at the moment I'm finding it fast, I am finding it charming, and we'll see how it goes. Usually if it starts out charming, you know it's going to be a disaster. I finally finished chapter 1 of Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. This is going to be a book I continue to dip in and out of until I decide to make the plunge and read it, because We saw my TBR last week. We know what is on there, and that is a ton of books that are now stacked up here. As you've probably noticed, this stack has got higher since last week, but that's just because rather than have all of my unread books scattered about all over the place, they're now in this. Will we keep calling it the trauma table, as per Doris of all the books instructions? I don't know, but currently the only book that I'll be looking to read after I've read Monkey is Cloud Atlas. That'll be the next one I start. But I wanted to point out that I have started Sleeping Beauties. I've got a chapter in, and I'm just going to keep dipping in and out of this because when I bought it, it was already water damaged. So I don't mind reading this book in the bath. And we are still reading The Eighth Life by Nino Haratschvili. I really need to knuckle down. So when I've done Monkey and I've started Cloud Atlas, I'm throwing all the other books out the window. Not literally, because I don't even let my dogs go near my books. Do you think I'm going to throw them out of the window? I've seen Camille of What Camille Reads. I've only recently subscribed to his channel. I know it's taken me a while. He's done a review of this. I'll be watching it later. This didn't make it onto the shortlist of the Booker Prize, and I feel the International Booker Prize, and I feel like I'm somewhat to blame for that because whenever I pick up a book for one of these prizes, it's like whenever I have a favourite act on a TV reality show where they're singing or the dancing or the whatever, they're not going to win. It's what happens, and The Eighth Life didn't make it to the shortlist, and I'll still read I'm still going to read this book. I was enjoying it. For it to have made the long list is good enough, isn't it, really? I imagine there's tons of translated fiction that I'm not getting anywhere near, and I really should try and make the effort to read more of this. One thing I have been doing, and I'm thinking of deleting because I've been doing it too much, is I haven't got screen time on my phone, but about 90% of my battery dying this month and these last 2 weeks has been because of Scrabble and playing Scrabble on my phone. And it's not helping me get anywhere. It's stopping me from reading, it's stopping me from writing, it's stopping me from watching Booktube and being creative. And so this happens all the time. I'll download games, I'll play them for a few weeks, and then I'll get rid of them. And so that will be going today. We will be getting rid of Scrabble, and I'm sorry to anybody who I'm in a game with. I don't care. It's taking up too much of my time. Then television. So we know I got this television from the shop when I was last there, and I haven't watched any of my DVDs on it yet, although I do have plans for, what was it? I wanted to do a rewatch of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit whilst doing some writing in the background, so I'm thinking of doing that. However, last week there was a question on Tipping Point, and it was to do with this game, and immediately I knew it was a sequel game, and I knew who it was going to be. Now, I never got to play video games a lot. It's not a sad story. My cousin had video games, my older brother had video games, so I got to play them whenever I saw them. Whenever the Nintendo GameCube came out, I had a fascination with that. And my cousin had one, and then I ended up buying myself one for my birthday in 2008. And I so rarely played it. But this question had me feeling nostalgic. Still got the GameCube, so plugged it in yesterday. I played it for 5 minutes before switching it off because I realised, you know something, at the age of 27, I don't have time for video games. I've never been a gamer. I've never been someone who's understood video games, and having this whole thing with Scrabble and then this, it's just made me question, why am I trying to waste all of the time that I have in a day? We know that time is precious. At the moment, there's this uncertainty when I'll get to go back to work, but for the last 2 weeks I've had off. And I know that I could have finished the final Doris book in that time. I know that I can write, at my best, 10,000 words a day. And considering this is only the first draft, I definitely could have done that, and I would have been done in the middle of last week. There's so much I could have got done in this time. And even though I was ill that first week, and I have been reading, and I've got that done, I've been more present on YouTube. Sorry, I've just picked up himself because it was beside me. I've been more present in these parts. I really want to knuckle down because I get this restlessness with not writing. I've talked about it before. I get sad when I'm not being creative, and it's just not good for me. So I don't know why I have allowed myself to continue with this behaviour for so long. The games are out the window. The films can be put into another time when I'm going to be doing what I did a few years ago, which is to write a page, read a chapter. And I don't know why I'm putting this off. Is it because there's an air of finality about it? Is it because I am finding the final Doris book more difficult to write? And it should be more difficult to write. This morning I uploaded the first chapter of Our Doris. Me reading it, and I have a few more recorded to try and upload at some point, but the original recordings are still online if you wanted to hear them. They're just not very good. This isn't the greatest recording, but it's still better than what it was originally. Whilst I'm reading it, I'm noticing that I've definitely improved as a writer, and I appreciate that. And I set out to make the final book more difficult. I gave it more of a plot, and I'm trying to keep focus to the plot and to the characters and to make sure it still sounds like these characters, but I'm also not allowing myself to ramble as much in the books as I would ordinarily. And whilst the books have grown, the chapters have grown in length again, and I'm writing it in a certain way, but everything is there for a reason, and I don't know how I could cut it yet. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm trying to just think about getting words on the page. That's gonna try and be my focus, is to read a chapter, write a page, read a chapter, write a page, and just get this book done. And maybe I should talk about what I'm listening to, because I will be listening to V.V. Brown's Glitch album, because that is what makes me feel creative for whatever reason. And I'll also be listening to Dua Lipa's new album, because I've listened to it a few times. I listen to it when I'm cooking. Seen some things outside this house. I'm just picking everything up off my bed. The angrier I get, the more I need something to shove the anger into. I am transposing all of my anger and frustration at the universe into this pen. I'm very sorry about it. These were a gift, by the way. Papermates, called the Comfort Mate Ultra. These are my favourite pens to use. These ones here. These are the Bic Crystal Original. And this was a Christmas present. And if you didn't know, one thing you always get given as a writer is more and more pens. There is a stack of about, 16 unused notebooks behind me for future works. Indeed, I have been saving these three. I believe these ones that have illustrations on the front by Jackie Morris, and inside they are very finely lined, and the illustrations continue throughout with yellow lines. And these I purchased for a project back in 2016 when I first had the idea. When I read Himself, I recognised parts of the idea I'd have for this book, and I said in my recap that I don't mind that this book exists and has a similar story, because I'll be writing my story completely differently. However, reading Himself made me realise that I can also be unapologetically weird and humorous in a book. So if I ever get to write that book, then these are the notebooks I will be using for it. I can't write that book until I have finished Royally Doris. My plans for this year that have now gone out of the window, that I'll tell you about. My plans this year, which won't be happening, were to have finished Royally Doris by the end of February, and then I'd publish it in June on the 5th year anniversary of Our Doris. I was then going to be releasing a poetry collection in September, hoping that I'd have got more magazines to accept my poetry. Unfortunately, I question whether I'm actually a good poet anymore because of the near 60 submissions I've made in the last 2 years. I've only managed to get one poem printed. I am proud of that, and I know that sometimes you have this cycle of rejection. I feel like 1 in 60 is maybe showing that I might be doing something wrong. I wanted to bring out that poetry collection, and then in January I was going to release the novella A Prior Commitment. I give that title out all the time because this is a story I've planned for 6 years. I know exactly how the story goes. It's a cut and dry novella. It will be between 30,000 and 50,000 words, and it introduces us to another older lady. But I can't write this book I planned a few years ago until that's written, and that's why I need to keep up with my writing, because there is so much that I want to get done, and the more I play Scrabble and avoid it, the less time I spend writing. And I feel like I could have had a lot more output in the last year than I have done, because when you think about it, and I want people to think about this for a second, whilst I wrote Poetry and Doris Ahoy last year and they were released, I finished An Heir to Murder in August 2018 and didn't work on it for nearly a year. And then, yes, I did spend September until January or February editing that book. I just feel like I'm not doing enough. I'm the only person that can force myself to do anything because I have no deadlines. I have no one there saying, we need this book, we want this book. It's just a case of getting some work done. And that's all I think that I want to talk about. What have you been up to this week? What have you been reading? What have you been writing? What have you been watching? What have you been listening to? Or just, tell me something good that has happened in the last week. That's me. I hope that you got something out of this video besides sheer boredom. Thank you if you stuck around this long. And until next time, that is all.